Hey, it's Braxton with Braxton Bruce Photography. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to find your style. There are 4 steps that are going to be important in transforming your work into a body of work that is consistent and has a style that you love. Step number 1, understand what your goals are. If you don't know what you're trying to achieve with your images, then it can be very ambiguous as to how you should go about styling the images or what retouching to do. First, you need to understand, are you trying to be a commercial photographer? Are you trying to get ad campaigns? Are you trying to do product photography? Are you trying to do maternity or portraits? If you don't understand what you're trying to do and what customers you're trying to get, then really you could do any style you want and it would be just fine. So the very first step, ask yourself what you're trying to achieve and who you're trying to be, and then we'll move on to step 2. Step 2, find images that you love. Go online and look in forums, look on agency websites, look on portfolio websites, anywhere you can, even just Google images, and find photos that absolutely connect with you, ones that you want to keep looking at, ones that you want to study, ones that make you go, geez, how do they do that? It's amazing. Find those photos and then put them in a folder. You should probably find between 15 and 20, maybe 25 photos that you can put in this folder that all exhibit something that you absolutely love. They don't all have to be the same. They can be different styles, but there should be something in the photos that sparks your interest and makes you wish that you could do that too. Step number 3, look at each one of those photos and identify what it is about that photo that caught your interest. Go through that folder of photos and for each photo, make a list of 3 to 5 characteristics of the photo that are what made it interesting to you. What was it that stood out and made it amazing? If you do that with all of the photos, each of the 15 to 20 photos, by the end you should have a substantial list of characteristics that you can go through. Once you have that list, identify any common threads that are between the photos. If there are any of those common threads, that might just be your style. If there's something that amazes you about 15 to 20 different photos, circle that characteristic or those characteristics, and then we're ready to move to the next step. Step 4, create a body of work in which those characteristics are represented. You're going to need to go out and experiment and figure out how to incorporate those ideas into your photos. Once you know how to do it, then it's just a matter of doing it. The more consistent your portfolio is, and the more it exhibits that common thread or that vision that you've just established, the more successful you're going to be in getting higher end clients as well as getting hired to do the kind of work that you want to do. I want to show you how I did this. Let's look. Okay, the first photographer that I found that I really loved was John Keatley. John Keatley is a strong, established, working photographer who's been around a long time. The common threads that I see in John's work are humor and a painterly quality in the aesthetic. So looking through John's work, you can tell that a lot of these have expressions that are not focused on sexiness or beauty. It's focused on character, illustration, and humor. I came from an illustration background, and so this was really attractive to me. There's a lot of stories to tell, and I feel like someone like John Keatley is really doing a good job of that, and I wanted to sort of emulate that. So we'll move on to the next one. I don't want to spend all day. The next one is Eric Almus. So with Eric's work, there is a variety. I would say the hallmark of his work is he started out as a landscape photographer, and so a lot of his work is a subject that's sort of small in the frame surrounded by a beautiful landscape. So this is what I see in Eric's work. It has this wideness to it. It seems like he's shooting with a sort of a wider lens, and he's got a painterly aesthetic. It's focused very much on beauty, which I like. In school, we studied a lot about the different movements in art, design, and photography. The one that resonated with me the most was the classical era, the one where they were absolutely focused on beauty, idealism, and truth. And to me, those were the most important things. And so in my photography, I knew that that was something that I wanted, and I see that in Eric Almus. Okay, so moving on to Tim Tatter. Tim Tatter is a sports photographer, and Tim is known for shooting the height of the action. You can see in a lot of his photos, he's got this really heightened action His lighting is very dynamic. Lately he's been using color gels, and he's always been on kind of the cutting edge. He's kind of a trendsetter for this genre, and I just really like a lot of what he's done. So his light's not quite as soft as Eric Almus. There's a little bit more of a harshness to the way that he's lighting, and it works great for the intensity of the sports that he's shooting. So this is something that I followed. I wanted to emulate that, so I played a lot with using kickers and that harsher light. And so my lighting is somewhere in between. I'm not quite as soft as Eric or John Keatley, but I'm probably closer to Tim Tadder in terms of the modifiers that I use and how I go about it. But I liked the height of the action. I liked the sort of the intensity and the colorful work that he does. So we'll move on to Chris Chrisman. You can see in Chris's work, there's a lot of softness and a very painterly quality. A lot of his work has a softness not only in the aesthetic, but also in the subject matter. There's this sort of nice emotion, this connection. It's a soft, personal, sort of engaging feeling that is in the subject matter as well. And I really like the painterly quality of his images. Now, a lot of these I don't really look at very often anymore. This was more when I was starting out. So a lot of the work that I was looking at of Chris's was back in his early days, and this is sort of more the work that he had then. But this looks like a painting to me. Part of the reason is it's a composite. Obviously, that path is way too small for that girl and that tortoise to be standing there. But we don't care because it's pretty. I really like how soft the aesthetic is, the subject matter, and so that was influential on me early on. Okay, moving on to Dean Bradshaw. Dean Bradshaw changed a lot. There's almost none of the original work that he had when I was starting out on his website. But he still has this, which he did a year or two after I got started. And this doesn't really represent what made me follow him, but I just wanted to give you an example of something he's done that has that painterly look. So here's one he did called Golden Years that has older people. At the time, he was known for some roller derby photos he did. There were some with some like Navy SEALs running through some tires. And his aesthetic was pretty dark. There was a lot of depth and dynamism in the way that he was lighting and the colors he was using. Okay, so with those in mind, let's go look at my work and see if you can see the similarities. So, I think it's obvious that my work's not exactly the same as any of theirs, but you can see some trends or some things that maybe are similar. So I have sort of a painterly aesthetic, because that's just what I love. I've got a shot like this that's a big landscape with a small subject, and it's all about beauty. This might be similar to an Eric Almus. I've got something like this that might be similar to John Keatley, where it's got that painterly aesthetic and it's focused on sort of storytelling and humor. You know, I've got some things like this that might be more like Tim Tadder, where there's some three-point lighting and some intensity to it, and the light's kind of harsh. So this is very similar to Tim Tadder. He's done triathlon photos. I think there's some similarities, except mine's a little more focused on the landscape and the beauty. I just want to show you that what I'm telling you in terms of how to find your style, I've done it. I encourage you to give it a shot. Go through, see what you can find, and start doing experiments to figure out how you can incorporate those keywords into the direction of your work and see how that elevates your work as well as your ability to get hired. If you like this video and think the information was helpful, share it with a friend. Like it, subscribe, and I'm going to have more videos just like this coming soon.